Well,
All right, welcome everybody. This is
yeah,
one of our last sessions of the day. Thank you all for spending your time with us here at the Virtual Christmas Summit. We appreciate the time that you've spent with us today. And the famous Bill Jenkins will
yeah.
be covering a number of useful things to do with scripts in FPP for us.
Okay. Yeah, well, thanks everybody for joining this session. I mean, you have a lot of choices today as to which ones to attend, and you get torn between which ones. But thank you for coming. But we'll get started here. And
Welcome to the 2024 Virtual Christmas Summit session for the Virtual Matrix and Pixel Overlay script using the FPP REST API.
okay, hopefully you heard all that. I don't have the screen up showing the shared screen, but okay. But right now, there's a couple of QR codes up on here. One is for the presentation itself, and the other is for the actual Python script that I'll be demonstrating. Okay. It's probably considered the classic or old school way of interfacing into FPP. It's not a plugin, although who knows, maybe I'll take the time and try to figure out how to do that. But uh, it's just to demonstrate how you can utilize the pixel overlay, but it'll be demonstrated on a virtual matrix. So we're going to go into Xlights, some of the settings in it to create a virtual matrix, as well as an FPP. They're just screenshots right now. And then we'll cover the pixel overlay models itself. And one of the somewhat undocumented features yet now where you can create a submodel on a virtual matrix. And then the actual overlay script. So this is my sixth year doing the Blinky Blinky, and I love camping and backpacking, fishing, and musical composition when I'm not messing around with my lights itself. And at one time in my life, I worked at a theme park in Ohio where I put roller skates on a penguin for what it's worth. So, and that's my wonderful wife there in the shop below. So, okay, this is the lab. It's not very complicated. Essentially, I've got one Raspberry Pi, a Pi 4B hooked up, and it's a player. Uh, and then got a desktop that can communicate it, that's running Xlights on it. It's Windows. And then I have a monitor hooked up to the both Raspberry Pi HDMI ports. I can flip the monitor back and forth, but my plan is to only leave it on the lower resolution, if you will. Okay, at this point in time when we get to a live demonstration. For those who may not know, a virtual matrix definition that you set up within FPP allows you to take the HDMI port and output that sequence to a projector or a TV monitor. And some people would find this beneficial if they have a projector, or they're planning on maybe using a TV monitor for a tune-to sign, for instance. And the matrix model that you create within Xlights has to match the virtual matrix configuration in FPP. And you'll see that that's the case here. So this is just some information here. And a gentleman had a class all about virtual matrix optimization, but it gets into the fact that it suggests if you're using a 1920 by 1080 that you start at 192.108. However, what you may find is the larger your screen gets, even at 1920, the potential for where it pixelizes because it makes the pixels that much larger would be noticeable. So I actually have used a 768 by 432 in one monitor and a 192/108 in the other. However, when I show you this live, I don't think you're going to be able to see the difference because the screen's not that large where it would show the pixelation where you're going to see the edges being jagged, for instance. But the one thing you want to do is do it in increments where you're maintaining the aspect ratio that your TV has, whether it's 4:3 or 16:9. You don't want to mix those up, or otherwise you potentially end up with things on the side or where it doesn't fill the entire screen. The downside to creating the higher resolution, obviously, is that your render times and the size of your FSEQ file is going to increase significantly. So now, it is recommended by the manual to use the DDP protocol. However, if you set it up as a remote multi-sync configuration, that doesn't really make a whole lot of difference, okay? And that's one reason why you should upload the FSEQ file to the FPP device, whether it's a player or it's a remote. And it specifically states, do not use a resolution of 1920 by 1080. That's over 6 million channels that you would be expecting it to do things when it's a virtual matrix. So here's some of the statistics. If it's a 192 by 108, it has 62,208 channels. A 768 by 432 has close to 1 million channels. And these are actual statistics I gathered on my system. No, it's not the highest, newest, fastest Windows processor, Intel, or it's on a Mac with an M3 or something. But it gives you an idea that as you increase the resolution, you're going to increase your file size as well as your render times. And the same MP4 video was used to create all those statistics. So this is just a definition of the virtual matrix within Xlights. And you're creating 108 strings by 192. And that's basically all it is to create that virtual matrix. Same way with a 432 by 768. Now, the system settings can help when you're doing things in FPP. So these are what I used. You may find other things that work better for you, but I was using these settings per se. Now, if you download the actual presentation, you'll be able to see these a lot better. I tried using a zoom tool, but the problem is it zooms both of my screens. So it makes it a little tough to work properly. Okay. But one of the things I learned is that it helps to specify exactly the type of monitor resolution and whether it's 60 hertz or 50 hertz per se. And that's why I'm forcing the HDMI resolution on both of those. Same screen. Oh, that's why. I had an arrow in here. I forgot about it. All right. So these are the channel outputs it creates within Xlights under the Other tab. And it'll create a virtual matrix. And this is the way it describes it within there. It assigns the channel count. And this will do this automatically within FPP if you upload the configuration when you're in the controllers, or if you also use it within the Xlights FPP Connect tool. So it can automatically create these. You can do it manually, okay? Just be aware that you can have issues if you try to do it both ways where something gets replaced. And one of the things I've run into is something to do with the submodel feature. So when I have a pixel overlay model set up, what that allows you to do is you can overlay things on top of what's already on the model. So it's not necessarily limited to a virtual matrix. In other words, you can have a normal pixel matrix and use the pixel overlay function. So this is something that can be done with the virtual matrix or with almost any model, except if you're trying to put text on it, obviously you couldn't do that on something that, like an arch. It's not going to work very well, probably. So you need to do these things. And this is what you can do in the FPP REST API. which allows you to display text on the overlay model at some point, or you can fill it with an entire given color. And what I ran into is when I created a submodel, I couldn't figure out a setting in Xlights to stop it from clearing the manually created submodel, which it doesn't use if you make a submodel in Xlights on the virtual matrix. It doesn't upload that as a submodel. Probably a feature enhancement. I guess maybe it would be nice to have. So at least as far as I could tell, it doesn't do it. So, but this is what I created. And it's created my two virtual matrices. And then I created a submodel down below it. And the part that's a little confusing in regards to this is this part here doesn't really line up with the text headings. So you kind of have to figure out that it's really talking about a matrix instead of the number of strings. So it does work. It's just they're trying to use the same area, but they're reformatting it to make it work with a submodel. And you did that by clicking on the add button here. And I hit enter and made it go on to the next one. So, but you can click on the add button, and then that would allow you to create different types, whether it's the virtual matrix or the other part. So what is this script all about? Well, the purpose of this pixel overlay script is to display a message using the pixel overlay text in the FPP REST API. So this is an example of one running the Python script that I created. And you give it a host name, the message you want to overlay, and the model name of the virtual matrix that you want to put it on. And I'm picking a font color of red and a state of 3. And basically what there's 3 states, and we'll get into the options for this script. And there's the host name, the message string, the overlay model name, the state, and it's enabled or full, transparent, and transparent RGB. And when it's using the enabled or full state, if there's anything on the virtual matrix that's playing because a sequence is playing, that all disappears, the sequence part. It's strictly the text that would be going across. So that occurs on a submodel or on the full. The only thing I will tell you is there's a known issue with the other 2 modes in the submodel, where it doesn't work if you use like the matrix tool to, mess around and see how it works on the submodel. I managed to figure out a way to do it in mine, but I'm kind of doing something that I don't think the code was written to, work the way it does. It's just that it functions with my particular Python script. But transparent makes the text transparent over the existing sequence. Transparent RGB makes the text solid over that, but it still allows the sequence to be seen behind it. So there's the font colors, the font name, the font size, pixels per second. And when you increase the font size, you'll need to increase your pixels per second if you're expecting it to scroll across the screen in the same amount of speed. And a lot of these have defaults so that you don't have to, specify all of it. The font color, you can actually do a hex string and specify any of the possibilities of what you can come up with a hex code. FF would be white, so on and so forth. But you can put in other hex codes and get orange and, the other colors. But you can also just specify white, red, green, blue, yellow, black, cyan, or magenta. All right. And then there's an anti-alias. I think that's supposed to help it with the edging, but I do not know that for sure. The seconds to sleep defaults to 3 seconds. And the reason why I'm doing that is the script actually will run until the text that's scrolling across the screen, for instance, has actually completed the scroll. It knows when it's completed that. And verbose logging there is within the Python script. I have several things that will display if you turn that on to give you an idea of what's going on, especially if you run into a problem. So those are the options. Now, you may wonder, how many fonts does it support? Well, these are all the fonts that are supported by the pixel overlay. And there's quite a few, and I'm not going to name them all. It defaults to Helvetic. Okay. So now, how did I find out all this? Well, if you're going to try to use anything in the REST API, the best place to look is under the help screen inside FPP itself. And if you see, there's a REST API help here, right here. And what that does is it brings up the following screen, which you're not going to be able to read because of all the things it lists. But there it is. And underneath here are all the overlay REST API functions. Now, what's a REST API? Well, if you don't know, a REST API is a methodology to use a web-based interface where it's doing a get or a put and running a particular API either to get information or provide information. Okay. And they actually document, for instance, each one individually, and you can test it. And what that does is it here in this, it shows you in a sample of what the JSON format needs to be, that it gives it in a put request to the Python, to the REST API and FPP. And then you can get the output. Okay. Well, what this does is it says display the text on the overlay model. So in order to do that, though, you have to, how shall I say, you have to set up what state you want it to be in. You'll probably want to clear the screen so it doesn't have anything on it, and then run your script.
Bye-bye, boys.
Have fun storming the castle.
Think it'll work?
It would take a miracle. Bye-bye.
Well, hopefully it doesn't take a miracle to get our script demonstration here to work, but that's what I'm going to try to do now. So I've got to do a few things to make that happen. And one would be to get my thing back here so I can change my setup and not have the, whoop. Okay, so, and I'm not going to share the screen anymore. So basically what you're going to see behind me is the actual script running. Oh, I have to shut down the PowerPoint or you won't see anything. Okay. And I got to find the right screen. Okay. Yeah, there we go. And the slideshow. Okay. All right. So right behind me is the actual monitor. So we'll see how well this works, but this will be the first one. I'm running this Python script actually on my Windows desktop right now. And all I'm doing is starting up a command file that'll run multiple Python scripts to display this text. So we have welcome in the center, to the in the center, and then we're scrolling up 2024 and it's in red. And then we're scrolling down in green, the virtual Christmas summit. And then we're doing left to right, which I'm not sure why you would ever scroll text that way, but then right to left as well. And I believe that's in magenta. So that's that one there. Okay. So the script. Okay. So that's basically a real quick one. Now, the thing is, that script, I'm now going to execute it from FPP itself, from the command line. So you can actually upload the Python script and a couple of 3 bash scripts, which are very similar to the command files I created in Windows, to run the same thing. And what this is doing is the commands necessary to get this to function, okay? And the idea was this is where people are taking small TVs and they're using those for Tuntu signs. Well, you can create something. I had one friend that talked about splitting the screen up so that part of it would have, just the scrolling text saying tune to this, that kind of thing. So another example would be this here, and this is on the Windows system. Okay. And so as you'll see, there's some things running in the background here. So, and it may get a little noisy. I can't tell you how loud this is going to be because it's going to come over the microphone, but. Now, if you'll notice, the sequence is not up on the screen right now. But then it appeared. I get my head out of the way. Okay, so at this point, it's going to keep playing, but I'm sure you're tired of hearing Gummy Bear right now. But the whole point of that was to show you the 3 types of states that can be done. And if you'll notice, when it's on the submodel, it makes it black down there. It doesn't do the whole thing. And it would be similar to what you see on a TV screen when they do things, and they tell you about something, but they don't want to put it up on the whole screen. So sometimes they use an overlay method where you can actually see what's still underneath it. Sometimes they also just black it out, which obviously it makes it easier to read what's going by on that. Now, you can change the font, you can change the size of it. Obviously, it should fit inside the submodel if you're not using the whole screen. So that's basically what I was trying to demonstrate was, especially if you're doing a Tuntu sign, is the advantage of this is the Tuntu sign text can be totally external from whatever you're displaying on the screen. So it gives you some flexibility there if you need to, hey, turn your radios down, and it's not part of the thing. Now, I do have it set up to where this can actually run continuously and show the same text over and over. But currently, there's no way to shut it down except to reboot the system, if you will, in FPP. If you have it running on FPP you'd have to shut it down on the the other side. So that's why I'm looking at maybe doing a plugin where things can be shut down. You change the text because you need to do something and display something else, or something where you could queue up in a message queue using the message queue aggregator to let it feed it, similar to what it does with some of the other plugins. And then there'd be a way to disable or enable it, but where you could actually boot up FPP and it would show the normal text, but then you could always have it put a different text up, that type of thing. So at this point, I guess what we can do, I mean, we've got plenty of time here, but are there any questions? I mean, I don't have a problem trying to, open up the floor to talk to people and see what, and hopefully you were able to see the screen at this point in time.
Yeah, you're currently sharing your camera only. You're not sharing your screen.
I'm not sharing.
What you're trying to do. Yeah.
My screen.
Yeah,
well,
we just see the camera. You don't see the screen. So Bill asked in chat, would you be sharing your computer screen to show us how and where you are running these scripts?
Oh, sure. Okay. Well, it was hard to share the screen. I wasn't sure I could share the screen and share the thing at the same time, but okay. Forgive the old guy and not knowing how to use Zoom for all that type of stuff.
No worries. That was just a question by Craig in chat.
I understand. I'll be glad to share the screen. Okay, no problem. So we'll put the screen back to sharing. Okay. And so here's the actual where I was telling it to play the gummy bear sequence, that type of thing. But here's the actual scripts that are running over here in the windows, and here's down here where I ran one, and I can start up another one. Okay, I don't really want to do that. Okay. Here, I'll start one up on the FPP side. We'll do the one below. And okay. So without although I could turn the sound off, that might help. That way it won't be quite as distracting. So there's the sequence playing, and then the text is scrolling across the bottom. And what I did here to get this to work is it has to see that it's a submodel and then actually take control of the complete virtual matrix and then do the submodel. It's the only way I could get the transparent and transparent RGB to work properly, because what it does is it doesn't clean out the text as it goes across. It just starts making whatever color it is a complete blur all the way across. And it has been reported up on GitHub. But I know they're working on a lot more important things than that. So, and then here's off the Windows screen. And I guess I can run this in verbose mode here. Oh, well, that's not going to make any difference. Never mind. I'm not passing it as a parm into it. But as you can see, the gummy bear song sequence is playing right now, but it actually blanks the entire screen, okay, as it scrolls this text across. And unfortunately, because of how I'm doing this, you really can't see that. And this is on a 192 by 108. So it is possible to do it this way, but it also works on a 768 by 432. When I started getting higher than that, I had some issues that I was seeing, what do you want to call it, tearing or lag. And it could be because of the particular SD card I was using. I do not know. But that's one reason why you don't use 6 million channels. I mean, and even close to 1 million, but you really can't see a whole lot of difference between when you put a video up on that versus the other way. So, and obviously the further back you get from something, the less tear you would see. But the larger the screen, obviously if you got a projector going on a garage, you're going to see the pixelation a lot sooner at the 108, 192 recommendation. And just to give you an idea there, I will not play the audio here. That's an actual video embedded inside the virtual matrix playing. Okay. So it gives you some idea of what that does. So are there any other questions? I mean, do you get an idea of what's actually taking place? You can see here the sequences and what's being passed. Now, I set the sleep to only 1 second. And what's that is doing then is every second it's waking up and checking to see if it's actually scrolled across the screen by checking the REST API to see if it's still active. So that's the way how the script works in particular. There were the QR codes at the beginning. I can bring those back up again if necessary. And this is just using an SSH and logging in and changing into the scripts directory in FPP to run those 3 little bash shell scripts that I created. But the Python statements are basically the same. And I can only tell you the Python code I developed on my Windows platform, all I did was upload it into the version 7.5.5 of FPP and it worked fine. Any other questions? Okay. Well, let me continue on here.
Just see in chat, Stephen asked, I'm sorry, Becky, I didn't know if you're in here right now or not. Stephen asked, what is the best way to create a vertical virtual matrix?
It would be fairly simple. Let's say you wanted to make one that's 19 by 20 by 1080. You would just invert what's the strings to be what's going across. And I think you can, and still make it the left corner or whatever, yeah. And then you should be able to just turn the screen, if you will. But I'm not sure how you do that with a projector, but I guess you could make it a 1920 high and 1080 wide. So it should be feasible. That's probably the easiest way. I've never done that myself. I mean, all of mine are the 16:9 format, but you could flip it on its ear. I don't think there's an easy way to, change it from, landscape to portrait in Xlights itself. But the number of strings are going to specify how wide it is and how high it is. So, I can, let's see, with Xlights itself, I think you would just go in here and you'd make this like 768 strings and the nodes per string would be 432. And that would make it a horizontal. And then you can make it vertical. Okay, you may have to change that. Okay, to get it to work properly. But I don't think you can just change it to be vertical and it changes I think that's the way it thinks the strings are running up and down instead of across. So I would leave it at horizontal and just change the number of strings and nodes per string and just flip them. You should be able to do that. Now, there may be a way in your projector, for instance, to actually tell it to rotate itself as well. where it's taking it and turning it and making it up and down. But I have not done anything like that with it. So let's see. Okay. Let me start the script back up. Not from the beginning. Okay.
Hey,
So,
Bill.
yes.
Craig is asking if you would schedule the script in FPP or would it be run manually each time?
When I've done this live, I actually had a player and it was a lot more complicated, but since we were doing this virtual, but I had a player and it was actually in the playlist, it would be launching the script as a batch script and it would run in the background and then the script, the overlay would run off the remote. So this is something you could schedule. And it would be possible probably to even set it up that when you started, this is a schedule that just runs all the time because it's, the tune-to information, for instance. But the advantage of this, you don't have to get into Xlights and change the text and then render it and all that. It's just overlaying on the back of that. I even thought about you could make something where it puts up the background at a certain color because that's one of the other overlays. You can change the background to like all red, that kind of thing. So it just depends on how you want to use your tune-to sign. You may just want to leave it blank and never put anything on it. Okay, so this is our script demonstration.
I've just sucked 1 year of your life away. I might one day go as high as 5, but I really don't know what that would do to you, so let's just start with what we have. What did this do to you? Tell me. And remember, this is for posterity, so be honest. How do you feel?
And I don't know if you can hear the audio or not because I may not have taken the options, which seem to be you can't set those permanently yet.
We can hear the audio, Bill.
Okay, so we've gone through our questions. Okay, so but hopefully I haven't wasted an hour of your life or a year. Okay, but the idea was to try to give people an idea, and maybe they're just interested in using some of the REST API to do something else, and what it takes to discover to do that. You can also download some of the plugins and read the code and kind of go, oh, that's what that is. That's kind of how I discovered the different states. It wasn't, real clear, obviously, when you're looking at the REST API. It just says, hey, you're going to set a state. What do I need to set a state for? And, how many can there be? Now, the Python script itself tries to edit things, but there are some things, obviously. I mean, I discovered something. If you gave it a bad color or whatever, you get a 503 error with when you try to put it out to the REST API. You have no idea what's wrong. Okay, that kind of thing. So, but that's just some of the things you run into when you're doing any type of development like this. And what I was trying to see is if there might be, interest to create a plugin, and I may not be the best person to create that plugin, but where people would be able to use the web GUI in FPP itself to go in and set the text and the color and the font they want and all that. And then they just say, hey, enable it, and it does its thing. Similar to the matrix tool, but it would just continue to scroll that text until you tell it not to do that type of thing. At least that's one possibility. So, but anything else? I mean, here, let me do this. I'll end the slideshow and I'll go back to this in case there's any interest here of where you want to take a screenshot of this so you can go grab the Python script. Okay. Obviously, I can't guarantee it'll work in every situation, but this should work on a Mac, or in Linux or anything else, even on a separate system or in FPP itself. Now I see the chat. Okay. And you can definitely schedule the script in FPP. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry I missed the first one where I'm sharing the computer screen at the same time. I didn't intend to mess that up, but I didn't know you'd be able to see my screen as well as that at the same time. So, I mean, I would like to thank everybody for participating in this and for everybody else that helped make, VCS possible. And my thing is to try to encourage people to, just, do what, use what the tools that are there, but maybe you have a tool that is not there and you might be able to develop one and you have an idea of doing that. And I'm sure there are people in the community that could help you with that per se.